Hello and welcome to this second look at Judge Dredd and 2000 AD early Titan book graphic novels. Now, as you know, if you've watched the first video, I absolutely love these and I'm super stoked to be showing you the second part of my collection today. So without further ado, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and let's get to it. So the second video is going to start off with one that I think is actually pretty darn rare, you know, and that's the Judge Dredd Color series. Now, as far as I know, there was only one of these, and this one's sort of subtitled Judge Dredd Color Series, Book 1, The Streets of Mega City. Now, it is quite early because you see on the back there's only a handful of books that are listed as also in print, and it is dated 1982. And the thing about this is they're actually in colour. Now, as I said, as far as I know, this is the only time they ever did one of these. And the strips, I guess, are from the Judge Dredd annuals. So you got Pinboing Wizard there, which I think was from the 1981 annual. So these would have obviously been quite difficult to replicate in the traditional black and white Chronicles of Judge Dredd series, so that's why they did this one odd one in colour, and it's great. I mean, the paper is not super high quality. It's almost a bit like one level up from one of the original 2000 AD progs, but it's still really nice. This and yeah, quite scarce. This, I think this is quite a rarity, possibly the rarest one in the whole series, because I've only ever come across the first one of it. Now, yep, $2.95. That was a little dearer than the other books when they first came out. Yeah, pretty nice, that one. So if you do come across that, do grab it, because it's a good one. Now, this is one of the ones that you know, sort of launched the series really, and it's got. If you remember, the very first appearance of Judge Death is in one of the earlier Chronicles of Judge Dredd volumes, but this is the standalone where Death returns, which is Judge Death Lives, and yeah, it's Prog 224. There we are, and that's when he comes back with that. You know, the much you can imagine the outcry when they must have said to Bolland, you know, when are you free to do the next one, because we've got a hit on our hands here. And I remember reading this at the time back in 1984 and just being utterly blown away by just how good this particular strip was. And I read it again, and it's still fantastic to this day. It really is fantastic. Just look at that cover art, just superb, absolutely superb. And in my opinion, this has rarely been matched in the whole history of Judge Dredd. Fantastic in so many ways. There's a little backup strip in that one, the Father Earth, which is not great. It's one of the earlier strips, but that initial run, the Judge Death Lives, is just fantastic. And if you've never read it, if you've never read any Judge Dredd at all, I would say pick this one up, and also the next three, because these sort of go together as a bit of a trilogy, starting with Block Mania. So Block Mania is the precursor to the Apocalypse War, and it's like an introduction to it. It comes highly recommended. You've got the absolute cream of the 2000 AD Judge Dredd artist crop who all worked on this, and once again this was just superb. And this is the whole, is it 10-part mini series that leads up to there we are, leading up to the start of the Apocalypse War, and it's just so good. And it does absolutely need to be read prior to the Apocalypse War, so you've got the full story. And great Mike McMahon cover there with Ron Smith as well, and then that leads straight into the Apocalypse War. So this is there's book 2, and here is book 1. These are sporting Carlos Escazera covers, and these are absolutely fantastic. Really nice books. A perfect way to read these, because once started, it's difficult to put them down. They are, I mean, they say drinks are Moorish and food's Moorish. These comic books are Moorish, because once you start, there's no way you're going to be able to stop reading this until the very end, because this is absolute edge of your seat stuff with a cliffhanger every 2 or 3 pages. It's just amazing, absolutely amazing, and comes highly recommended. It really does. So if you've never read these are the ones to get, and it's book 1. And because it was such a long one, I mean, it took in the comics it took about 3/4 of a year to get through the entire story and tell it all. And it's book 2, and then the stories after that. There was all the fallout from the Apocalypse War. The mega city was destroyed, and it was time to sort of rebuild. And that has its own stories after that, which I find equally as good. Now, this next one we've got here is City of the Damned, also part of the Chronicles of Judge Dredd. A nice, once again, standalone Titan book. This one's 1986. Bit of a beefy one, this, so 90 pages. So it's got the complete City of the Damned story there with some nice early Steve Dillon artwork throughout. Steve Dillon, Ian Gibson there as well, did some episodes. Yeah, not one of my all-time favourites, but I enjoyed it all the same, and it's certainly nice to have the whole lot in one nice package. Now we've got The Cursed Earth, books 1 and 2. So this is another, I think this is one of the very first sort of epic Judge Dredd long stories. So this comes in 2 volumes. The first volume with a brand new Brian Bolland cover, which is great. Obviously, even though these came out fairly early on, the controversial episodes with the Jolly Green Giant and Colonel Saunders and things like that have already been edited out, alas, for copyright reasons. Yeah, not bad at all, not bad at all. Don't mind this at all. It's all right, Cursed Earth. And I think it was a good little subject, the Cursed Earth. It was a convenient plot device for the writers of 2000 AD, for sure. Now, Judge Caligula. So this was another great early one. Once again, Judge Cal wasn't my favourite because I didn't read it as it was coming out, because I didn't start reading 2000 AD until about I reckon about Prog 100, something like that, because at that time I was into Star Wars Weekly and I was also buying Doctor Who Weekly. 2000 AD was something that, it was just one more that I couldn't afford, back then. But I read Judge Cal later on and it wasn't bad, don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It's just not one of my favourites, and it is what it is, I suppose. It hasn't got that same twinge of nostalgia. The way I was reading the Apocalypse War when that was coming out week by week, I mean, that was just something else. So that's perhaps why I like that one. Now, the next one's the Judge Child Quest. Now, this one came in 3 volumes. 1, 2, 3. And once again, I wouldn't say I hated it, but I wouldn't say it was my favourite. I didn't mind the Judge Child Quest, and it was nice to get outside the confines of Mega City, which was quite good. But I don't know. It had its highlights, I suppose. It depends on who the artist was, because there were a few Ron Smith and Bolland chapters in there, which was quite nice to see. I do remember that one. That was the Jigsaw Man. That was pretty cool, and that certainly lent itself to Brian Bolland's great artwork. But once again, it was such a long story. For me, it didn't quite all gel together, really, but everyone's got their favourites. But yeah, Judge Child Quest, that's in three volumes, that one. Now, the next one we've got. Now, this is Destiny's Angels. So this is a little bit later. It's still a Titan book. It's a 1990, so it's right on the tail end of the Titan stuff. Black and white again, but rounding up stuff that hadn't already been reprinted at that point, by the looks of it. So that's Destiny Angels. That's a standalone. And the next one we've got is Mega City Vice. So this was another tail end of the Titan run, 1990 again. And the format, I don't know if it's difficult to tell, but the format is, the books are much thinner and a little bit shorter. So maybe they were just doing a little bit of cost saving there. And once again, this is just rounding up the strips that by now hadn't already been reprinted. And that's not a bad thing to do, just to be comprehensive. But if you're trying to read these in order, using these Titan books, you'd be all over the place. This is a second volume. Similar again. and then a third volume of Mega City Vice. All these are pretty scarce in actual fact, these later Titan graphics. So if you do come across these, I think they're worth picking up because I don't think they turn up very often. All right, so that's the Mega City Vice 1, 2, and 3. Now we've got Judge Dredd in Oz. Now this was another three-parter, and you know, I didn't mind this strip, to be honest. I do love all the Midnight Surfer and Chopper stuff, but it just got a little bit, shall we say, a little bit samey, and I was never a surfer dude. I mean, that wasn't my sort of kettle of fish, so it didn't really appeal to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the original surfer strips and the follow-up, you know, Midnight Surfer and what was it, Un-American Graffiti, but this one, it was an experiment, I think, to try and flesh out the Chopper character, and it just didn't, for me, quite pan out perhaps as good as it could. However, these graphics are nice. To have the whole lot in one place is really good. You know, it's definitely the way to read these. Although, of course, by now, the earlier some of the first pages of each week were in colour, like such as these, so you were getting colour spreads. So these don't lend themselves very well to these black and white reprints, and it sort of spoils it a little bit. So that, yeah, see, there we are. Prog 576, so from 520, the 2000AD got larger, and the Judge Dredd always had a colour double strip in the middle, which doesn't lend itself very well to this. So Judge Dredd, another standalone, Rough Justice, this one's called. It is a Titan book, so it's part of the Chronicles of Judge Dredd, and it's just catching up with it once again, a few odd bits and pieces that hadn't been reprinted before. So that's all that's in that one. It's all right. This next one's an absolute classic, I have to say, and this is The Dead Man. So I'm sure it's got John Ridgway artwork. He was one of my absolute favourite artists on Judge Dredd, and I'm sure you'll remember this particular strip where Dredd is out in the cursed earth. I remember reading it at the time, and it was a great story. This one, nice standalone, and once again, this one does come quite highly recommended. Quite highly recommended. Now we got another, well, perhaps the greatest of the Judge Dredd supporting characters, and that's Judge Anderson. Always had a soft spot for Judge Anderson ever since the early days of Judge Death, and these are the collected Judge Anderson. So she did have her own strip, which I absolutely loved, the Anderson Side Division, and that's where these come from. And there's some darn good stuff in here. So these actually are quite tricky to find, these Anderson graphics nowadays. I'm not sure if they've been reprinted in modern times, you know, in the last like 10 years or so, but these ones back in the mid to late 80s are quite tricky to find, because this is the first time they were ever reprinted, and I certainly enjoy looking through these. I remember we had loads of the when I had Purple Haze, the shop, we had loads of the original artwork from these, including a nice double page Dark Judges pin-up, which was absolutely amazing. A Brett Owens one, I believe it was, and I always wish I kept those, but can't be helped. You've got to let some stuff go sometimes. But yeah, those come recommended. There's actually a fourth one. I think this is the hardest one of all to find, Judge Anderson Volume 4. So once again, if you do come across these, do grab them, because yeah, you just don't see them very often. All right. Now the next one's a bit of a curiosity. It's a hardback, and this is the only hardback in the Chronicles of 2000 AD that I've actually got, and this is a Robo Hunter one. So classic Ian Gibson artwork here, and it is volume 1 in the series. It's pretty early on, because as you can see, it's only $4.95, but it doesn't list that many in the series. So I seem to remember I used to have a couple more in hardback, so I don't know what happened to them. Maybe I'll come across them, but I think they would all be with my other Titan books. This is the first hardcover edition in March 1983, and it goes back to the very first appearance of Sam Slade as the Robo Hunter back in Prog 76. And yeah, really good. I mean, Ian Gibson's style's phenomenal. He's a fantastic artist, and I remember these were great fun. It was totally in keeping with 2000 AD, and it just fitted the era. For me, he was a bit like I don't know, a cross between Dirty Harry and Deckard from Blade Runner, I guess is how I would describe him. But yeah, really nice to have that one in hardback, and they don't turn up in hardback very often. I mean, they're rare. I would class them as rare, so if you do see them, pick them up. And next was, The Bad Company. Now, I don't think I've got them all. What's that? 1, 2... Yeah, I've got 1, 2, and 4 of Bad Company. Now, it wasn't a bad strip, this. I read it at the time. These aren't in great condition, but these came to me. A friend gave me these quite recently, in actual fact. So that's why I've got these in the collection. They're not in the greatest of shape, but I didn't want to turn them down because they're ones I haven't got. It wasn't a bad strip. As you can see, Pete Milligan, Brett Owens, Jim McCarthy, these were the people who went on to do Deadline and Tank Girl. Of course, you can recognise the similar artwork style in there. They're all right. They're a curiosity. They're not bad. They're not bad. Unlike the last two, which we've got, which is the VCs. And this was a highly, in my opinion, highly underrated strip written by Jerry Finley Day. And these are pretty tough to find, these. I did used to absolutely love the VCs. Some nice early Cam Kennedy artwork there, although it did have a whole manner of artists would work on this one. And this is once again pure sci-fi saga, and it fitted 2000 AD very, very appropriately. And there's Vanity. Look at those really gorgeous artwork there on the front jacket. Absolutely fantastic. And there's a little list of what was published up to that point. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that second look through these brilliant early Titan Books graphic novels. Now, I've actually got enough for another video, which will be the later ones, the Hamlin ones, the ones that were published by 2000 AD Books themselves. So that'll be in a third video, which will be coming up in a few weeks' time. So until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.